up to the podium. He is going to be evaluating, well, he'll tell you who's going to be evaluating, but introduction here for our speaker number 2.
Gosh, I'm so nervous. Does everyone know I'm nervous? Palms are sweating. What if I flub the intro? If I spit while I'm talking, that would be really embarrassing. Well, despite the outward appearance of an intrepid speaker, both beginning and experienced speakers are nervous about giving a speech. And even some of the rising stars who have been here for a while, you get pretty comfortable in the weekly meetings. But think about it, what if you're participating in a speech contest? What if you're speaking at the district meeting like I did? Chance to be nervous. Well, today, Jeff Chilson, a seasoned speaker in his own right, is going to talk about anxiety. He's working on a project titled Controlling Your Fear from the Better Speaker series. Now, the slides come with the presentation material, but it's up to Jeff to build a speech in his own words. And more than that, did he employ all the speaking techniques that we should know? Vocal variety, did he use any visuals effectively? Did he personalize the presentation, make it his own? These are all techniques of speechcraft to apply. Timer, can you please give the green card at 5 minutes, yellow card at 6 minutes, red card at 7 minutes? And now please join me in welcoming Jeff Chilson to the lectern for his speech titled Controlling Your Fear. Jeff?
Fantastic introduction. Speaking of great adventures, think in your mind for a moment. Imagine some great adventure that you've been on. Think about it, really think about it. And if it's truly a great adventure, there was a moment where you faced some adversity, in other words, it would be great. You got that in your mind? Okay. Let me ask this question. When you were in that moment, when you were afraid, what was the emotion you were feeling? Shout it out. It's obvious. Go ahead. Afraid.
Fear.
Fear. You felt fear. Same question. In that moment, you got through the adversity, otherwise you wouldn't be here today. So, in that moment, you probably showed some courage. You were intrepid. So what emotion were you feeling when you were courageous?
Excited.
Confidence.
Fear.
Fear! Fear again! Isn't that a ripoff?
Yeah.
Whether you're afraid or you're courageous, either way, the same emotion you have is going to be fear.
Well, not for them.
Regardless, it's true that what we need to realize is in those moments, afraid or courageous, we need to come to grips with this idea that we need to control our fear or contain it. And especially as we think of ourselves as leaders and we want to communicate our ideas better, and in particularly when we come here to the lectern, we stand here in front of an audience, we want to figure out ways that we can contain and control that fear. Think of the things that cause you fear. And there are certainly plenty of things, new and unknown situations. Carl mentioned that in his introduction. We get sometimes comfortable here and in our club setting perhaps, but if you go out into a different setting, you're in a competition for instance, you're going to experience something that's a little different because it's new and it's unknown. Other things, risk of failure. Of course, that risk and that anxiety is going to go up as you go along, as you face perhaps a presentation before executives. Other things, potential to appear foolish. You don't know what you're talking about. I think we all have that kind of fear, especially back in the college days. And the other one is possibility that you're not going to engage the audience. I just had a speech at my son's kindergarten class, trying to explain to 5-year-olds what an engineer does. They don't drive trains, necessarily. So I had that a little bit of fear going in. I'm going to address these 5-year-olds. I'm going to engage them. So think about what it is that triggers your fear. And then when you realize what those things are, you got to lean into them a little bit. You got to kind of face up to those fears, figure out why they're there, and figure out how to address them. Because as we all know, we're going to have some symptoms that come out of that. And the symptoms, of course, are quite well known. Carl had mentioned a bunch. You feel sweaty, your heart rate goes up, blood pressure rises, extreme end, dizziness, lightheaded, and passing out. But also, it is going to affect your performance in two particular ways that I always think of. One is, and I can't come up with a good term for this, something called, other than to call it your performance tell. Like in poker, they always talk about, what's that person's tells. You can tell whether or not they're bluffing. In your performance, some of those nervous tics sort of come up. Now, we've all sort of identified mine, so I'm gonna fess up to them. We all know that when I get nervous, I like to transfer all that energy down to my feet and start pacing. I've been receiving notes about that from time to time. Other things that I do is, particularly at the beginning of speeches, I'll start to speak very fast and keep going, trying to get all my points out. Keep going and going and going. People say, okay, slow down. That's when I'm nervous. I start to speak fast. The other one, I think I picked this one up recently, is I look for what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do with my hands. And so if I have a pen, I'll start to play with that. The other one I do lately is I'll start to play with my ring a little bit. I don't know if anybody else plays with jewelry or whatever else. Those are going to distract your audience. And once again, you're not going to communicate as effectively with them as you would love. The other thing that's going to affect your performance is going to be how your body reacts. You tense up. If you're tense, those body gestures, your movements aren't going to be as fluid as you'd like them to be. If it affects your breathing, you can't breathe as deeply when you're nervous. You're not going to be able to project your voice as well as you'd like to. So all those ideas of vocal variety are going to go out the window. So realize what those anxiety triggers are, what your symptoms are, and then start to think about how we can address them. Now, Toastmasters has 3 particular ideas that they have when it comes to trying to address that anxiety, trying to manage it, like I said, kind of contain it. The first and the most obvious, and really the most useful, but also the hardest to do, is gain more experience. And that means practice. When you're thinking about your presentations here for the club, it's working in front of a mirror, perhaps, some people like to do. I know Fallon, last week she was mentioning, sharing with her husband, and getting friends or family together just to listen to your speech a bunch of times. I like to go find an empty conference room where I can do the whole thing. I can walk a lot, use the whole gestures and everything else, use my vocal variety, and try not to bother all my colleagues in Cube. But try and practice as much as you can. If it's a particular speech that you're worried about, if you notice what your triggers are, it's like I'm going to be speaking in front of some executives. This is a great place to get a dry run for your speech. We've had several club members do that. Use this as a laboratory for their speech before going out and giving their presentations officially in conferences and in boardrooms. Also, try and find those times you can give as many speeches as you can, whether it's speaking in front of a community organization, schools, this club, other Toastmasters clubs, competitions. Take advantage of whatever opportunities you have to speak. I think of it as sort of like an inoculation or vaccination. Every now and then I need my booster shot. It's one of the reasons why I came to Toastmasters. I sort of lost my nerve for standing here in front of the lectern and being in front of people. So I need to do it every month or every 2 so that I can be used to it once again. That's the first thing, getting more experience. The next thing, and this is an interesting idea, it's called visualization. And I hear athletes use this idea, and the research kind of backs it up. The idea is this: research shows that when you kind of vividly imagine something, your brain records it as though it actually happened. And if you ever watch the Olympics, particularly the downhill skiers, they only get maybe 1 or 2 runs down that slope before they've actually just got to do it. And so you see them up at the top of the slope, and they're just preparing for their chance for the run. They close their eyes. They can see them visualizing themselves going through each of the gates, making it to the finish line. The same idea applies to a speech. You can practice it. Just visualize it for yourself, all the individual steps you do to get here to the lectern. And it'll help to reduce your anxiety. And you just kind of close your eyes. You imagine you come into the conference room. You set yourself up. You have all your stuff, and you're well prepared. You hear the introducer. You imagine going up, shaking their hand confidently. You look out to the audience. You engage each of the audience members. You imagine yourself making each of the individual points you wanted to, and you get a nice, generous acclamation of applause at the end of your speech. give it a try. See if you can use that. Imagine it a couple times. I did it a little bit in preparing for this speech. And see if it helps you kind of reduce your anxiety level. And the last is relaxation. Finding ways to sort of physically relax your body. Now, the first two are kind of for your head, your mind. You do your preparation, you visualize your success. The last one is more physically about your body. And the presentation that was assembled for this, I'll forward it out later. It's available to anybody that's a Toastmaster. It has some more in-depth ways you can work on kind of relaxing yourself, more involved stretching. But in more discrete methods, or more, discrete is a good word, but more welcome uses in your cube or in your office in preparation for that moment. I'm going to suggest a few. And that is, first of all, try and find the areas where you might have some tension. Perhaps for some people it's their shoulders. Just try and roll your shoulders. Just try and loosen up those muscles. Or if it's your neck, roll your neck a couple of times. Go through the basic pre-shift stretching routine, whatever it is. Find, like I said, try and find those spots where you might feel tense. Because once again, if your muscles are tense, then your gestures or whatever it is you're walking back and forth, your motions aren't going to be as fluid. So you want to be able to do those things as grand as you possibly can. The next thing is your breathing. And that's the one that I always go to. So try and, whenever I feel tense on the day of my presentation, try and take some deep breaths, get myself calmed down. It also helps if you can stretch your arms up, take some good deep breaths, and then you can feel your blood pressure and heart rate go down. But once again, if you can breathe deeply, get yourself breathing, get that oxygen where it needs to go, your voice can project out to the rest of the audience. So those are 3 concrete techniques to work on when it comes to trying to control your anxiety. Gaining more experience, visualizing your success, working on ways that you can relax. So if you want to have this great adventure of excelling in leadership, taking what you learn here in Toastmasters and applying it to all the things that you really want to have success in, find those ways you can use to control, contain your fear, and become intrepid speakers. Give these things a try. You'll probably find them to be very worthwhile. I know I am. Mr. Toastmaster.
Time, would you please put 1 minute on the clock for everyone to finish their evaluation? That is great work.
Thank you.
Now, as the president-elect, what do you think our club's worst nervous tell is? As a compilation.
It's a compilation. Boy, that's a good question. I really have no idea.
Lack of volunteers to give speeches.
Yeah, not showing up.
Okay.
That's a good one. For me, Vice President Education. Best recruit said people.
That is, I will admit, I thought myself a lot as you were speaking. Oh, wait, I think I do that. Oh yeah, I think of everything I've done up here today so far.